Hello, this is CodeRage, and this session is about TMS Aurelius Free Edition overview and get started. My name is Wagner Landgraf. I have been working with Delphi for 21 years already, since first Delphi version. I am the manager of TMS Business Product Line at TMS Software, and I'm the author of some Delphi frameworks like TMS Aurelius, which is the subject of this session, TMS XData, TMS Scripter, and others. Here is what I'm gonna talk about in this session. The purpose is to teach you how to get started with TMS Aurelius using the free edition. So I'm going to show you how to download and install it. All the examples I'm going to build will be built from scratch, so you can follow up better. What I'm going to do here is setting up the database connection, persist and load our first entity in the database. I'm going to show you how to log. I'm going to log the statements that it generates so we can better see what happens under the hood. We are also going to see the database structure that it generates. I will show you how to use Aurelius dataset for data mining with visual controls. And finally, I'm going to use an existing database to show you how to use your legacy Aurelius with your legacy applications. Okay, so first thing is, of course, download TMS Aurelius. You can simply go to the tmssoftware.com website, and Aurelius is available under the free tools section. You can find a link here for the TMS Aurelius Free Edition. Of course, you can go directly to tmssoftware.com/site/aureliusfree.asp. You will be required to fill a form with very basic information. This is mainly for us to be able to send you a download link to your email, and it's up to you if you want to receive further news about TMS and Aurelius. If you really want to use Aurelius in the production, it's interesting that you at least check to receive news about TMS Aurelius, so you'll notify you about new versions and new stuff. Once you fill the form, a download link will be sent to your email. Of course, I have already downloaded here, so you don't have to wait for it to download. And I'm going to install it here. I have a Delphi Berlin clean install here, and we'll install the TMS Aurelius Free Edition. You can simply choose accept the license agreements, choose the place you want to, the folder you want to install Aurelius. I'm just using all the defaults here. As you have noticed, the TMS Aurelius Free Edition works with all platforms supported by Delphi, so Windows, macOS X, macOS 10, and iOS and Android. Okay, let's open Delphi. You see the Aurelius Free Edition in the splash screen here, and of course you can go to the About to check it's installed. Here is Free Edition for TMS Aurelius 3.4. Okay, I'm going to start the application. Actually, I said we are going to build an application from scratch, but I have at least saved a blank application here to save time. But it's a simply blank application with a form. So let's start working. The first thing we need with TMS Aurelius, of course, it's a ORM application which maps classes to the database, so you can save data in the database as objects. So the first thing you need is the model, the classes, the objects you want to work with in your application and persist in the database. Let's create a new unit here. Let's call it entities, and let's create a very simple one. We can call contact. Let's create two basic properties here, which will be ID of integer type and first name of string type. There you go. So we want to save this work with this object, this class in our application and persist it in our database. So we need to map this class to a database structure. We do that using attributes. That's how Aurelius works. You have many types of attributes you can use to map the database, the class. So for example, I can specify in which table this class will be saved and which column, field column, this property will be saved. But Aurelius has a very straightforward way to do that, which is the auto-mapping attribute. So here we are saying this class is an entity from all the classes in your application. This is an Aurelius class, and let's do an auto mapping of it. Now we want to create a database connection. Let's create a new item here and use the wizard for Aurelius wizard for creating database connections. So it's under Delphi projects, TMS business, TMS Aurelius connection, DB connection. In this first example, we're just going to use SQLite, so it's faster to set up. Here we go. The wizard creates a very simple connection here, and by default the SQLite connection, it creates the database in the same folder of your executable file, with suffixed with the DB extension. You can change it here to set up to save it any folder you want, or even use just memory here to save data in memory. Alright, we are going to use the default. Now we want to work with that connection. First of all, we need a connection to the database in the way Aurelius understands. This is declaring the Aurelius driver interfaces, and it declares the IDB connection interface. This represents the database connection that Aurelius uses. It uses an interface because in that way it abstracts the database it's using and the component for accessing the database. So you can use Fireduck, DB Express, or any other components that you want to use. There are several components available. And we use the new connection model we have just created. Let's save it here and name it SQLite connection model. Alright, and let's use it here, SQLite connection model. And on the create of our main form, let's bring retrieve that connection from the what I have just created. Okay, there you go. So we have now a SQLite database created, that is about to be created, and we have a connection for it. Now what we need to do is ask Aurelius to create the database structure, the tables and fields and the database, so you can save data there. We do that using the database manager class declared in this unit, and to use it's as simple as using database manager.update, and we provide the database connection. Let's see what happens here. Save it and run our application. Alright, if you open the database in the SQLite Expert, we can see that there is no table created here. That's something that you might fall into when you are building your first application. It's simply because Delphi linker just removed tContact class from the application because it's not used anywhere. So what we can do is simply call register entity to make sure that this class is not going to be removed by the linker, or we can simply start using the tContact class in our application. So if we simply start using it, it's not going to be removed by the linker anymore. Let's then save our first object in the database. Let's create a button here. Let's call it create contact, and to do that we are going to use the object manager. The object manager is the main Aurelius class that it's used to handle objects, save and load objects from the database. That's the class you're going to use most of time in your application. So we're going to create an instance here. Just the same way of the database manager, all the object manager needs, it's the database connection for the database you're going to manipulate. And here's how we create our first object. Let's create an instance of contact here. Create a new contact. First name is going to be Wagner, and let's save it in the database. Oops, contact.create. Alright, our data is saved. Let's check the database here. Here we have our first table, contact, and it has an ID field, first name, which is of the type text, and here is the data we have. How to retrieve such data from Aurelius? Let's create another button here. Load contact. Create another object manager. creating a different manager here for learning purpose, and to tell you that the manager is very fast to create, so you can safely create it for, and you should create it for very quick and small tasks. But of course, in your real application, just as I'm going to show you here later, you create a manager for a unit of work. So for example, you can create a manager for the form or for a bigger class that you will use to process data. Let's retrieve a contact, and here how we can use it. Manager, please find a class, all classes of type contact. I could pass an ID here, so find the contact with ID 1, or I can just tell Aurelius to retrieve just one from the database and bring a unique result. Or that's not even needed here, because we all know that we have just one record in the database. So this will retrieve the contact, and we can show the contact first name here. There we go. Here's how you retrieve data from the database. Now let's start logging the statements generated by Aurelius so we can see better what happens under the hood. I'm going to create a new form. Let's add a memo so we can view our SQL statements. Let's save it here, name it log form, the unit log form. Let's name the form fm log, and just remove the lines here for a blank memo. Alright, it's always, I have changed the caption here, sorry. Name FM log. Alright, let's also do not let Delphi create the form automatically, because we're going to create it here in our main form. So use our log form, and in the create, I'm going to create the form here. And use Aurelius events to log it. This is declaring Aurelius events manager unit. And we can use the default Aurelius Mapping Explorer here. The Mapping Explorer is where all your mapping metadata is. And we have the default one. Aurelius has a multi-model setup where you can separate your entities and classes in different models, but here we are going to use just the default one that has the events here. So we are going to use the on SQL executing event. You have other events here on inserted, updated, collection added, so you can easily have a log of what your application is doing. And the event system is accumulative, so you can plug in more event handlers so you don't replace the existing one. So let's subscribe to the event using anonymous methods, and here we can simply log. Using the arguments, pass it. So the event passes you with the SQL statement and also with the params, if there is any. So if you have params here, let's log it. Let's add something to divide here. Okay, let's run. I forgot to display the form here. Load contact. Okay, we can now see the SQL statements that Aurelius generates. We can start changing our application a little bit, adding more properties for our class, for example. Let's use a new nullable type and create some more properties here. For example, last name and also birthday. The nullable type of Aurelius allows you to have not only the value of the property but also a null type, which is very handy when you're dealing with the database, because in the database you can have null types. Let's see what Aurelius does when we run the application. Since we are calling update from the database manager when we run the application, Aurelius have created two new fields to the database, and you can see it there in the database. Okay, we can now start using the Aurelius dataset to speed up the process of development. This approach here using code is very interesting, of course, when you want to do processing, and it's an example how you can use the simple plain old Delphi classes to persist in the database. But using Aurelius dataset is it's very easy to use with the visual controls. Let's do here an example here with dbgrid, navigator, data source, and the Aurelius dataset. Let's connect stuff. Let's connect the visual controls to the data source and the data source to the dataset. Note that the dataset is just a visual binding. It's not very similar to the regular dataset, because all the communication with the database is being done by Aurelius with the classes. The Aurelius dataset just shows the classes, bind the classes with the visual controls. Now I'm going to create a manager for the form. Let's destroy it to avoid memory leaks. And with the Aurelius dataset, we are going to set the manager, and set the source of data you want. We are just asking, please bring me all contacts, and open it. Let's run. Okay, we have our data here. Here a list of objects being displayed, and note that I can change data here. Let me put a fake birthday date. Here you can see update contacts. Aurelius have built and executed the SQL statement to update the data. What interesting to see is that when doing, here's the insert example, when updating, Aurelius will only change the field that has been changed, so it doesn't update all the data again, just the modified properties. Alright, so this is a very handy way to mix Aurelius, which brings a very robust structure to your application, with the Delphi RADU way to work with applications, because with the dataset you can very easily handle the objects in the way you are used to with the SQL statements, but you still have the object, the ORM, and still working with objects under the hood. So let's just write another example here. Okay. There we go. Another interesting we can do is not let our classes to be anemic. Since Aurelius uses simple Delphi classes, you can do everything you want with the class, with that class. It's a Delphi class. It's not restricted to almost anything of you can do. So for example, you can create a property age here and a property full name, and add some logic to it. Full name, so result is first name if last name is null, then result we append the last name. The same with age. Let's use syslogos. If birthday is null, then age is 0. Otherwise, age is the years between. Years between now and birthday. If you run our application now, we have our new fields there. So this is two different things. First of all, we have our classes with more information there and more business logic there. It has nothing to do with the dataset, so you can use it whenever you want in your logic. But at the same time, the dataset shows the public properties of the class, which you can select using the regular field definition that we use with the dataset. But you have the advantage of having those properties available for you for editing or read-only view, which is the case here. So if we change the birthday here, it changed already. Okay, this is an example using the code first approach. Code first means that I have created my class and let Aurelius create the database for me, the database tables and fields for me. So you see that I didn't even bother with the tables and column structures here and types. I just deal with classes and let Aurelius do that for me. But what happens when I have a existing database application that I want to use Aurelius with? This is very simple, as you can use any attributes, many attributes of Aurelius to do that. For example, you have attribute column. So if the column name is a different one here, or the size of the column, or the foreign keys, the table names, you can have attributes for anything that you want to map. So you can simply create your classes and add attributes to map to your database. And Aurelius supports many types of generators, not only integer, but you can have git, you can have even composite keys, so that's no problem. Of course, it takes time. There's no time to show it here. So for that, I'm going to use the TMS Data Modeler application, which you can download it from. Let's go back to the initial website, TMS software website here. The TMS Data Modeler is a tool for manipulating database, and it has an option to export your existing database structure to an Aurelius classes. It's not a free tool, but you can simply use the trial version to do that, so that's no problem with that. And that's how I'm going to show you here. It's in the data modeler, it's under the business tool. It's listed here, TMS Data Modeler. You can simply download the trial version here and use it. I have it installed here. You can see that it's the unregistered trial version. So I'm going to import the existing structure from the database. I'm going to work with SQL Server here and use the Northwind database, which is a very popular one. So I'm going to create a new connection to SQL Server, provide the connection settings here. Alright, import. And here we have our database structure. All I'm going to do is export to TMS Aurelius. The output directory, I'm going to use the directory of our application. Unit name Northwind. And I have several options here to configure how I want to generate those classes. You can basically use the defaults. When you are more used to Aurelius and its options, you understand better what all those options are, like lazy mode, etc. It has an option to singularize class naming here, and I'm going to use that. So if I have a table orders, which is the case, it's going to create the class torder, and I can use it to change some default names if I want. So this is going to be the customer property. I want to use the create an order details property, which is a detail of the torder class. Anyway, there is many options here. The classes it's going to create, I can simply ask it to generate the class. Let's go back to our application here and add that new unit that was created, so you understand better. Here are the classes created by the data modeler. Let's search for torder, for example. And you see that it created the additional attributes that we need to map. So The torder class is in the orders table. The order date properties in the order date column, etc. Okay. To avoid confusion, let's remove our old entities class from the application. Okay, and remove it from the uses clause here. Instead, let's going to use the Northwind one. If we compile, we will have compile errors here. This is one very tiny example of the advantage of using an ORM. You have a lot of things that you catch problems at compile time instead of at runtime when you use SQL statements. So we just removed the units. The application says here that tcontact doesn't exist, so you can we'll replace it later. But if you had a SQL statement here, select from contact, we will only know that when we execute the application. Okay, to have access to our Northwind database objects, I have to create a new database connection. Let's create another Aurelius database connection. This time I'm going to use FireDAC with the SQL Server dialect. Here is our components. The wizard already creates the component for me. Since I have asked for it to create a FireDAC connection, I can use other components as well. Let's select the FireDAC SQL Server connection, and let's provide the connection settings here. The database is Northwind, the server, and authentication. Okay, our connection is working, and let's remove the login prompt and add a needed unit for our FireDAC. Let's save it, name it SQL Server Connection Model, and I'll go back to our main form and replace our SQLite connection model with the SQL Server connection model. And here in our create, we can simply replace that. Alright, now we are connecting to our SQL Server with the Northwind database, and we are going to retrieve orders from it. Let's execute. Here we have our orders here. Okay, so it's as simple as that. And to help us to manipulate the dataset at design time, we can use packages to have information at design time. Let's add a new project here. Create a new package. Save it. Let's call it Northwind package. Save the project group. One different thing we can do here is set the package output directory and add our entities. So this package contains the classes that we have mapped to our Northwind database. Alright, this way we can use the dataset better at design time. I choose the package that I have just built, and it lists the classes for me. Let's choose the order here, and this way I can I have information about the fields at design time. So let's choose order ID, order date, and order date, order ID, and shipped date, for example. And one interesting thing is that I can have associations here. So you see, let's go back to the order here. In the order class, you see that I have a customer property here, which is of type tCustomer. It's created this way by the data modeler because it was a foreign key. The orders table has a foreign key to the customers table. So that's how Aurelius works with foreign keys, because this way you can have full information about the associated customer with using a customer class. So we can have any info displayed in the dataset this way. For example, new field, I can create a field named customer dot company name of type string, of type 40, for example. I can order it here and name it customer, and let's see what happens when I execute the application. I have to change to Aurelius Free Demo application. Let's run. There you go. So you have the chosen the classes, and note that this field is coming from the customer property. One thing you can see here is that it's executing a SQL statement for every time I try to load a new customer. That's because the class was created using the torder class with a proxy. So I can optimize that using a different approach. The proxy classes is useful when you want to load associated data on demand. It might be useful in some applications, in some situations, which is clearly not this case here. But I can optimize Aurelius depending on the situation for it to not to load it in advance all the associated objects. I can simply use create alias tfatmode.eager, and I need to add the units for about Aurelius criteria here. There we go. Now you can see that Aurelius have built a join with customers, and now you have all orders, and we don't have extra SQL statements here to retrieve the additional customers. Finally, I can show you an example of master detail. Let me copy and paste the grid here. Let's create another dataset. And for that, we are going to use the dataset concept, which is order details, and we simply assign the dataset, the detail dataset, to the dataset field of the master dataset. If we execute it now, we have the order details. And note that the details are proxied, and that's one thing that is desirable here. So when I scroll, watch the SQL statements here. When I scroll, it will perform a new SQL. It's not very clear here. Let me help you out to see it here. You see here a new SQL where it's selecting the fields for the orders, for the order details. So there you go. It's an example of how we can use the dataset to see our data and manipulate our data with Aurelius. And finally, an example of the query. Let's add some filtering here. So for example, let's filter all orders so when I click the button, let's copy and paste the code here. Let's find all orders where our order date, the year of our order date is equal to the year we have typed it in the edit one. And let's order by order date as well. Alright, here is how the SQL statement generated by Aurelius. You can see that it created a where part, where date part equals to 1996, order by order date. And of course, Aurelius will translate the query you are building for the correct syntax depending on the database you are using, Firebird, Oracle, MySQL, etc. Alright, this is an example of using queries with Aurelius. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for your audience. Here are the links that you need for the downloading Aurelius Free Edition. One thing I would like to mention is that Aurelius Free Edition doesn't have any limitation when it comes to the features. In the Aurelius Free Edition page, there is a comparison table, there's a FAQ, and a comparison table listing all the properties. It's actually a very interesting table for you to see all the features that Aurelius has. And you can see that the free edition has all the features of the paid registered license. So there is no limitation, and you can use it for commercial use as well. So you can simply use it for any application you want. The only difference is that it's available for Delphi Berlin only, and source code is not provided as well, the premium support for TMS. So that's it. Thank you very much.